We've got a brand new James Gunn film, so today I'm going to stop and rank all 6 James Gunn films from the least best to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your ranking of the 6 James Gunn films that he directed. My list is not the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours as we go into this. This is a ranking of the movies that he directed, not the ones that he wrote or produced. So back in the 90s, he wrote Tromeo and Juliet for Troma Pictures. He wrote a superhero movie that Craig Mazin directed over 20 years ago. He wrote those Scooby-Doo movies from the early zeros. He wrote Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. He was involved with the Belko Experiment and Brightburn, but he didn't direct those projects, and this is a video about the movies that he directed. And let's get started. In last place, Super. Now, I don't think that James Gunn has any total misses, but the bottom 3 on this list are movies that, for a variety of different reasons, aren't ones that I just gravitate towards on my own. I think each of them have their own merits. And in the case of Super, his first superhero movie that he directed, this is one of the purest James Gunn films that we've ever gotten. It is unbelievably dark, it is weird, and it is filled with James Gunn's friends. And, you know, of course, a few years back, James Gunn was fired by Disney over old tweets. And some people seemed really surprised to learn that he had a really dark, crass sense of humor. And when that happened, I just thought, did you guys not see the movie that he directed that got him the job directing Guardians of the Galaxy? Did you not see his work before Guardians of the Galaxy? Because you just need to look at Super, Tromeo and Juliet, and you immediately go, this guy's got a weird, jacked up brain.
Don't deal drugs. Don't molest kids.
But to that point, as vulgar as this movie is, when you're totally unafraid of offending people, you can make some really, really, really funny jokes. And that's what this movie can be, absolutely hilarious, while at the same time being a movie that's pretty difficult to watch because it is just so in your face. It is so everything. So it will offend you. It's trying to offend you. And when you do that, there's a lot of fun to be had too. Of course, Rainn Wilson as this insane superhero guy is a ton of fun to watch. You've also got like Kevin Bacon in there playing this remorseless bad guy, a nice little touch. At moments, it can be surprisingly heartfelt. That thing that James Gunn is really good at, of making very weird films that can be funny, absurd, but then also touch on real human emotions. You get that in this movie. The score, also surprisingly good.
Shut up, crime.
But is this a movie that I choose to rewatch on my own? Not really. It's only a movie that I rewatch when I'm doing a James Gunn ranking. And it makes me laugh, but it's too far for me. It's just too extreme, makes me too uncomfortable with a number of things that it does. So I got to put it at the bottom of the list because it's the one I'm least likely to just rewatch on my own. 5, Slither. James Gunn's first film is a tribute to his favorite 80s horror movies, and it is just jam-packed with sight and plot references to that decade. It kicks off as kind of this invasion of the body snatchers type plot, and then it transitions into kind of a creature hunt movie, and then it escalates into a zombie invasion film, and by the time you get into the last 10-15 minutes, it's just all out creature feature, body horror, disgusting stuff. But the movie keeps reinventing itself every 30 minutes into something new, different, bigger, bolder, and weirder. It's probably the James Gunn film that's the least overt in its comedy. It's still quirky. It's still amusing. It has humor in it, but it's less of kind of like the setup punchline kind of humor. The jokes are less obvious. It's more of like, that was amusing and quirky rather than outright laugh out loud funny. Also, the movie works best as this kind of body horror, gross out thing where the creature effects are unsettling, creepy, and just nasty to look at, both with the way they're designed, the way they're visualized, the way they infect people, and invasive and gross is the best way to describe it. And also for that reason, much like Super, it's a movie that I appreciate, I can respect, it's effective at what it's trying to do, but it's not a movie that I just choose to put on randomly. It's not a movie that I just gravitate towards. I respect what he did more than enjoying specifically what he did here. So another one that I have to have lower on the list. While I don't have anything specifically that I think it did wrong, it's just not necessarily for me. For Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, traditionally, I've been very hard on this film and had it very low on my rankings. But with my most recent rewatch, I've had a newfound appreciation for it. I still have issues with the plot and the tone, but if I'm being honest, would I rather rewatch Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 or Slither? I would go with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, I have issues with the way that it's structured, where it feels like each act has a different villain, so it doesn't feel like it gets forward momentum and traction. I think it was a mistake with the way they kind of handled Ego as a final reveal. I still think it's a little bit odd with the way that it transitions between some really goofy elements and like Groot, a child being tortured without any transition. But on my most recent rewatch, I just got more out of it. I had more fun with it.
You look like Mary Poppins. Is he cool? Hell yeah, he's cool. I'm Mary Poppins, y'all!
And I think some of that is when you watch this movie in light of the holiday special, when you interpret it in light of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, it works a little bit better. As a standalone piece, Rocket was kind of insufferable. I didn't like the dynamic between Drax and Mantis. And so there's just several things that just didn't work for me. But you see these characters in a new light in light of what came afterwards. And they were a work in progress here. And I like where they went with it. I like where they took the Sovereign. I didn't like the Sovereign in this movie by themselves, but I liked where their story ended up going, how it played into later pieces. So I have a new appreciation for it. I didn't like the nasty nature of the dynamic between Drax and Mantis.
I am hideous?
You are horrifying to look at, yes.
But I love them later on. And so this is the early forming of a friendship that was really important and very endearing. And so it just plays differently in light of what came later on. Also, to a certain extent, I've just a lot of Disney products, including MCU products over the last 2 years, have felt like products designed by a committee for the broadest possible audience. And so when you rewatch this movie, it feels like a James Gunn film in the MCU, but it feels like what he wanted to communicate through these characters, the story he wanted to tell. It felt personal.
They remind me of a time when I took my daughter through the forgotten lakes of my homeworld. She was like you.
Disgusting.
Innocent.
It didn't feel like a product. And for that reason, it just made me appreciate it more than a bunch of other things that I've gotten from the MCU over the last several years. It looks better by comparison. So, as someone that's been very critical of this movie for several years, I'm warming up to it. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, remember to join me down below in the comments section. Share your ranking of his films. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, I've done a ton of other director rankings. Denis Villeneuve, Christopher Nolan, M. Night Shyamalan, Steven Spielberg, David Fincher, and a whole bunch more. If you like this kind of content, check out this playlist right up here when this video is over with. In third place, The Suicide Squad. To be perfectly clear, there's a pretty big gap between the bottom 3 and the top 3. The bottom 3 are all movies that I respect a lot of aspects of them, but they're not entirely for me. Top 3 are 3 movies that I love. So when it comes to The Suicide Squad, when James Gunn was fired, DC decided to hire him, and they said they were going to have him do a Suicide Squad movie. I thought to myself, that's perfect. That is right up his alley as someone that loves comic books, that has a very dark, twisted sense of humor, and that is really good with ensembles and taking a weird batch of misfits, squishing them together, and finding their humanity.
I'm a superhero!
And that's exactly what he did with this movie. You have King Shark, you have Polka Dot Man, but with each of these weird characters, he's able to both embrace the weird and not soften that. He leans into it, but also gives them something relatable. In some sense, there's something about each of them that's compelling, interesting, and human. So as you move into the third act, as wacky as it can be, it has emotional payoff and release.
That's my dad.
The other thing that he did here that I just thought was very cool is that he took inspiration from all these 60s and 70s war movies, in particular like The Dirty Dozen. And so we have this comic book movie genre where there's no shortage of comic book movies, and he found a new angle. He found a new set of inspirations to apply to the genre to do something that felt new, fresh, different, not more of the same. It's the same broad genre, comic book movies, but we've never gotten one like this before. It has all of the things that you want from a James Gunn movie. Funny, lively characters, dialogue that makes you laugh, big action, as well as heartfelt moments. Adding to the mix, you also get those inspirations from war movies. So a big triumphant film from James Gunn. It might be third on this list, but it's way up there. Our runner-up, Guardians of the Galaxy. And to be perfectly clear, this one in Volume 3, they're competing for the top spot. Maybe it's recency bias putting 3 on top. Both of them are movies that I love for kind of 2 different reasons. Both of them are very triumphant in what they were aiming to do. So time will tell which one comes out on top. But as for right now, let's talk about why I love Guardians of the Galaxy. And this is a movie that when they announced it, I was skeptical, and immediately it won me over. Where James Gunn was able to take these C-list Marvel characters and a wrestler who hadn't done much of any acting, the 5th build character on a sitcom, and somehow turn them into these characters that we absolutely love and launch multiple movie star careers out of it. And that's kind of his gift, his ability to make any character compelling, interesting, as weird as they might be, a talking raccoon, as strange as they might be, a talking tree that only says, "I am Groot." He's able to find the humanity, what makes them relatable to all of us.
We are Groot.
And he takes these misfits and he puts them together. They're interesting on their own, but they're even better when they're together. And that's James Gunn's magic. But it's not just that. He also is able to make this immersive world set in space. He said that he didn't want to make a movie like Star Wars, but he wanted to make a movie that made other people feel the way he felt when he first watched Star Wars. And I think he accomplished that with this big, massive world that we're exploring with these characters that we're getting to know. And of course, it's got his trademark humor.
That's when you...
Why would I put my finger on his throat?
And the other thing that it has is a fantastic soundtrack where you really, it like calls to mind classic mixtapes where you have rules of how songs can be included, how many songs can be included, has a deep knowledge of music, and they fit together while not being entirely obvious that they would go together. They capture these characters. It's deeply personal. And so all of it works so well as a package. It's fresh, it's funny, it's original, it's emotional. I love it. But coming in at number 1, at least for today, is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And the reason this one came out on top, at least as of right now, is because this movie just made me feel so many emotions where you will cry over Rocket's backstory that's absolutely tragic.
Pete, I'm done running.
You'll cry because you're laughing so hard at some of the jokes.
Analogy.
Is it?
Metaphor.
And then by the end of it, you'll have tears of joy. There's so many triumphant moments. There's so many arcs of redemption, second chances. And then as you move into the final 10 minutes and it's closing out everyone's arc, James Gunn found some clever place to close each of their journeys with the Guardians that makes sense, where each of us had this idea in our mind of what it was going to be, and we were all kind of wrong. And as he kind of bookended this trilogy of films, he laid clues all along the way and found those pieces and put them together that made us rethink these characters, even in the final moments. We're like, that's true. Yeah, Drax wasn't meant to be a destroyer. And you've been hinting at that all along with little moments. And so it was so satisfying. It was so emotional.
Whoever it was that you were in love with, it sounds more like her.
Her? Do not bring me into this.
And because they built up the High Evolutionary as this unsympathetic villain that is truly cruel and evil, it's so satisfying when he's defeated, when people are rescued, set free. The movie properly earns the payoff in the third act by slowly putting the pieces in place. Little things like at the moment between Cosmo and Kraglin lead to big payoffs in the third act. Simple things, but big things that matter. So for me, this was a triumphant conclusion for an end of a journey for a set of characters that I absolutely love. And James Gunn came up with a conclusion that was so much better than what I would have come up with. So it comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video, I've got more just like it. Check out that playlist right over there. I've done rankings of the Nolan films, Fincher, Spielberg, Shyamalan, and so many more. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.